Hey, welcome back to the Scaling Smart podcast. This is the podcast for accountants serious about growth and running their own firms on their own terms. So I'm Brian, and today we're here to talk about something that every one of us advisors needs to just hear. So small business clients, some of them think they don't need tax planning. They think the tax filing is the fix. And that mindset is costing them and it's costing you as an advisor. So let's break down why that is and what we can do about it. Filing, of course, we know the difference. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably have an idea. Tax preparation and filing is a compliance thing. And tax strategy and tax advice, that is the advisory piece. But let's start with what actually happens, on the front lines. You've got small business clients, whether they're doing 6 or 7 figures, and they come to you with this kind of like checklist mentality. How much do I owe? Did we deduct everything? Did you get my home office? Can I write off my car? How can I push this to like the very last week that it's due? And they're reacting to something that's already happened. The income has happened, the payments, the in and out, the distributions aren't planned, and it's just a mess. And what happens, and it's our job to meet them here and explain to them that the real savings can't happen. The real control over your finances and your taxes, it comes way before the year is closed out. And of course, you can, send money into retirement accounts afterwards. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the planning that goes into it. So I've had a client, let's just call him, Marcus, for example. So he had, 6 figures in tax bills that he was paying, and we'd been filing for years. And I had to tell him, I said, hey, listen, man. I know that you're paying this amount and I've been filing your returns, and it seems like even that becomes a chore, for them. You reach out, we did a good job on the compliance part, but what are we doing kind of long term? Like, is there any strategies that we can do to help you outside? Because the tax return is just one piece of it. What are you doing to build your wealth? You're paying all these taxes. What are we doing? I'm filing them for you. Of course, you want to high five me whenever I get you a little refund, and you want to, complain and, push off do an extension whenever the news isn't where you want it to be. So what are we actually doing? And that was the first time that I offered advisory to this client. So it was kind of like, my firm's gone through that transition of, we were compliance only, and we were doing the advisory kind of with the compliance, if that makes sense. If I'm saying it out the right way, we're doing the advisory work, but we're kind of including it for the people that ask, when we should be leading with it with everyone. We shouldn't be trying to compete with these firms that, TurboTax and what they're charging. What does QuickBooks charge to do bookkeeping? Well, when I do the books, I'm going to give you better insights. And if you don't believe that, then, maybe you should go to them and just get what they're offering. I'm sure that works for a good number of people, but the clients that I'm trying to design my firm around, lifelong, clients that are looking deeper into their numbers to try to extract business transactions and personal finance transactions, like, how do we scale this business? I've helped businesses scale locations, scale to where they have more partners, got revenue, got funding, to grow, and also help people wind down real estate portfolios for retirement, for simplicity, selling portions of their business to private equity, you name it. So you have to meet the client where they are, and you have to also let them know that here is what's included with the compliance. You have to separate it. Here are your required services that you have to do, whether you get with me or not. So you always want to lay that out for them. Whether you sign up with me or not, all my services include some piece of advisory. But whether you sign up with me or not, you're going to have to file a tax return. You're going to have to do your books. You're going to have to contribute to, you're going to have to do payroll, that kind of thing. So you have to set that up for the client and let them know, hey, this is a structure. So we have a kind of like a presentation that we do, and we show clients, hey, here's what you do if you kind of go the do-it-yourself route for compliance. And that's always available to you if that's the option you want to take. we only do the advisory piece. And then for the people that are advisory clients, we will take on some of that compliance workload from you. So that's why we call it one-stop CPA. So it's our job to bring that up. So to explain it early, explain it often, and explain it clearly. And you have to lead with the advisory work and let the client know where the lines are drawn. So sometimes I just pause with clients sometimes and let them know the tax return versus me. If you're doing this tax return with me, what pieces of it are you expecting? Because, am I doing it right? Do I have all the forms entered in the right place? Am I filing it the way on time? Those are the things that are kind of like requirements that the clients will have, of course. But what are the pieces of this that you're thinking are included? And that's what I ran into with a lot of my clients when I was doing compliance only and wasn't billing for advisory. I was just kind of doing it as it came up. A client's going through a business transaction. They say, hey, you did my taxes, and they're asking for the return. And then, hey, while I got you on the phone, or while I got you, why don't I kind of run this by you? Here's what I'm thinking of doing. And now all of a sudden we're in a full-blown business advisory, virtual CFO type of transaction, conversation. And it just happens, right there on the phone. Who wants to be that accountant that kind of like says, hey, listen, that's great. You got millions on the way and we've got something big happening, but hey, I need you to get with this advisory program and I don't even have it built out, but I just know I need to bill you for this, and then now you're billing for time, you're billing for conversation. That's never the way to go. So, the tax return, just to bring it back to the business clients, the tax return is where we report the results of what happened. It's again, reactive. It's last year. When you come to me looking for, goals, structure, forecast of income, different revenue streams, we're going to have this new entity that's going to be for this purpose, a family management or that kind of thing, real estate, LLC. These are future conversations. This is about implementation, the conversation. It's not about the actual filing that happens usually next year. So another thing that happens is when clients come to you, this is a big symptom. If a client comes to you and they visit you in January and say, hey, did you do the 1099s or can you do my 1099? So that's a symptom that we're not setting the right expectations ahead of time. Our firm doesn't do 1099 processing. We refer that out. We usually see what the client has. If they're already a Bill.com customer, if they're already with Gusto or their payroll provider, we tell them that they should start paying their 1099 contractors that way. I don't do 1099s. We refer that out. I don't do sales tax filings and we don't do payroll filings. Now we do help clients structure their entities and their banking transactions so that things are flowing in the right way from the right entity, from the right account. But that doesn't mean the actual filings, and that's compliance. That's not strategy. So when you're doing all that back end filing work, and trust me, if you have a small client list, there's some people that might be listening to this that have 5 clients that are all big money. So hey, if those clients want you to do their sales tax and that's part of what you're doing, or you're doing their 1099s for them, by all means. But, this is, if you're positioning yourself as a top tier tax advisor, but then you say, hey, yeah, send me the W-9 so I could fill those in for the 1099. You see what I mean? Like it just, or you say like, hey, I'm going to, file the unemployment returns and the 941s. It just doesn't match. It's like, well, if you're actually making impact and you're saving me money and you're helping me build, have life-changing results, then you're not going to be doing 941s across your client list. It just blurs the value that you're claiming to bring. So instead, what I often say, and I have website links that say, hey, this is how you ease the process for them to get to that payroll provider. Here are the tools that I recommend. I can even get you a discount. I have a sign up link, but we don't do those actual filings in house. We help maybe get you set up. We help you get on your way with that, depending on what level of hand holding you need. So we have to let you know what we do, what you have to do, and most importantly, why, and what is compliance and what is advisory. So, because your value isn't hitting submit on a form or preparing that form. It's in guiding the decisions and the transactions that happen throughout the year that go on that form, if that makes sense. So anyhow, the next thing I want to talk about is creating structure and not confusion. So what is the solution to this? Offering advisory packages and leading with them. Don't just add advice. I made this mistake myself, so I'm not preaching here. I'm just telling you what, when it clicked for me. When you lead with the advisory, whether it's a small advisory engagement, if it's some kind of like assessment, diagnostic, if it's something that's not linked to a compliance gesture, that's how you have to lead with. Because if that's not what they're after, then you're going to just create a big problem client. So, don't add advisory to tax prep. That was one mistake that I made when I tried to make this pivot. Advisory is your product. Tax prep is the outcome, if that makes sense. So constantly educating your clients, especially in the beginning, is how you get around this. Send them Loom videos, do a recap, and close out the tax return engagement so that they know this is done and filed. And if you do reach out, you have to be on a subscription for advisory work. And don't be afraid to tell clients like, hey, by the way, so glad to have you as an advisory subscriber. If you have any questions and you want to reach out throughout the year, don't forget that you have access to me to do so. So, don't be afraid to cheer on the clients that are doing the right thing, because then you'll start to see, okay, well, these clients, they paid, they got the right service. I want to be available for them. The ones that aren't, you clearly draw the line in the sand because, hey, you just wanted compliance. If you're only doing compliance, and only things we can answer are compliance related, that's advisory work. That's kind of something you want to start putting into your language when you're talking to clients, and it just sets expectations the right way, helps clients understand that how they can respect your time. Hey, just a quick break from this conversation. I hope you're enjoying it. Did you know that most people listening to this podcast haven't actually subscribed yet? And if that's you, no pressure, but if you've been getting value from these episodes, take a second right now, hit that subscribe or follow button. Really helps me bring smart, tactical content to accountants like you. Second, if you're an accountant who's great at what you do, but you still feel like you're undercharging, you're overworked, overwhelmed, or stuck with the wrong clients, then I want to personally invite you to my Scaling Smart 3-day challenge. In just 3 days, I'll show you how to price your services confidently, filter out the wrong fit clients, and build a lean tech stack that helps you run your firm like a business, not a job. Check out the link in the show notes. There's also a VIP upgrade that includes live Q&A access with me during the challenge. I'd love to help you make your firm smarter, more profitable, and more sustainable. All right, let's jump back into the conversation. Remember that tax prep versus advisory. Now, the approach that I take, and not all, companies go this route, but I believe in, and it's kind of like the clients expect the full service thing. Tax prep, there's some tax strategists that will say, hey, we're tax strategists and we work with CPAs to do the tax returns, but we're the strategists. So we give you the strategy and we hand it off to another firm to execute on it. And what ends up happening is you have a fragmented service. You have two different providers, one that wants to get you the max and they want to highlight, hey, do these things and we'll save you $100K. And then when you go to the provider that's going to do the return, you kind of see that it didn't shake out that way. And now you have to have a whole reconciliation conversation. Who did what? Who's to blame? They like to point fingers at each other. It's just a mess. So we offer, the way we do it is a full service firm. So tax prep and advisory and how it connects together, because, this means also audit support, clean deliverables, using a systematic approach like how we do with TaxDome, and having the strategy first mindset so that whenever a client does reach out for something, it's like, hey, yeah, we could throw that to the back office to finish up the filings, but let's make sure that we're bringing it to you and say, hey, this was the strategy and here's how the results came out. It worked out exactly like we planned it, or you missed out on this strategy because we didn't do X, Y, Z. And it happens that way. But when you're the one voice and when you're all it's all from one vendor, it kind of makes it easier to have that conversation and just keep it going with the client. At One Stop CPA, we only offer tax prep to clients that are on advisory services already, ongoing bookkeeping, ongoing advisory, whether it's twice a year, 4 times a year, monthly. That's when we offer you tax compliance work. So it does limit the clients that we get, but the retention rates are high. I have clients that have been with me for the time that I've had my CPA license, over a decade. So clients will stay, clients will say you build that trust with them, and being the all-in-one solution, oftentimes they'll come to you when there's compliance stuff, and you have to know, hey, this is a compliance conversation. And then they'll also come to you for advisory. You want them to come more to you for advisory and kind of limit the conversations that you have around compliance, because it should be just that, compliance. So, don't be afraid to walk them through it. Remember our strategy, like, for example, I run into this with a client. Our strategy when we first discussed the cost segregation, or this, the strategy for short-term rental loophole, it was based on a $1 million property. You ended up buying a $500,000 property. So the numbers scaled accordingly, when now they kind of understand it. So it's not a huge, you don't have to go and do a side by side, like this is the number, it's not a whole nother tax return reconciliation report I'm asking you to do. It's just being able to communicate that with the client. And I'll always be remembering that the client is going to come to you looking for that kind of conversation. The client, they're not accountants. They're coming to you to be the accountant. So they're going to come to you with those questions, and you can't get frustrated. Like, hey, you're not paying me to ask stuff like that. Like they don't know the difference. It's kind of like when you go to, let's say like a lawyer, and they come to you and say, hey, well, this is your retainer to, for us to look at your case and see whether we want to take it on or not. And then once they say, okay, we saw what your case has, and we see, the things that you discussed with us and what you mentioned, and we know what the process will look like with the discovery and the other side and the mediation or whatever it is. And then this is what we would charge if you want to take it a step further. So that's the extra work. So kind of compliance is like, hey, this is what we would charge in the filings and the fees, and, to get this stuff processed. And then this is the stuff, this is the extra. This is the money we're charging for why you want me versus somebody else, because I could give you this recommendation and you can go to the lawyer across the hall, and what is it that I'm offering that's better than them? So you have to be able to elaborate that, explain that. And nowadays we got to get ahead of that. So the reason why I like using certain tools that do like AI tax research, quick research memos, is because now I can lead with that and say, this is the difference between me and the other firms, or if you're comparing it to like one of those online solutions, because I'm giving you things that I've already built for other clients, research memos on a strategy that you're going after, advice, or an example on a $1 million investment property that we could scale down to what you actually end up buying. That happens so often, with clients. I want to show them $1 million example, and then of course they're going to buy a $600,000 property or a $400,000 property. And now we're just kind of, the clients want to learn the piece about, what's the overall strategy here, and using that $1 million number for like, for example, like a short-term rental, and how bonus depreciation and all that shakes out. Use that as an example, even share it with them as a memo, like a tax research memo with all the little, like highlights of what they need to do to accomplish this. But the only effective way is for them to stay on with you so that you can help them execute it. You can help them implement it. And that's where the advisory stuff is. So of course, I hope it even makes it more clear, or maybe it makes it like now you have more things to talk about. So in closing, the key takeaway I want you to take here is just remember that tax preparation is not tax planning. Tax planning does not involve compliance work, and advisory is what the offer should be. Advisory is what you're offering your services as. Sometimes you do bundle it with other compliance things, but those should be kind of like fixed rates already in your head. And if you want a firm that scales, you have to structure your services and teach your clients what they're buying and stand confidently on what your value is as an advisor. So if you're going to show them that you're going to spend time doing this, and help them implement something that's going to save them hundreds of thousands, versus saying, "Hey, I'm going to help you get your sales tax and your payroll up to date." So, they're going to value those two different things differently. So just remember, even though you can help with those things, just make sure that you let the clients know this is compliance work, this is advisory work. You can expect me to take this role. You can expect that we need you to sign up with this vendor to do your 1099s and stuff like that. So, and if you want help with that, templates, the sales process, AI tools, and advisory pricing, join the 3-day Scaling Smart Challenge. The link is in the show notes. And I definitely think it's something that you would, you'd be happy with that you joined in on. So the link is there in the show notes for that. But until next time, keep scaling smart.